Now it's live.
Oh, I'll refresh it. Huh. The agenda is not on our website. I'll refresh it, maybe.
I thought I saw it.
It might have been because I didn't refresh it, so I'm sure it is. Yep, there it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Mara, we're ready to go. Yes.
It does say
Sorry,
it's live.
yes, we're going. We're on YouTube. We're streaming.
Okay, great. I'll ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll do a quick roll call. Councilmember Gully is not here. Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Here.
Councilmember Steele.
Present.
Councilmember Cummings.
Present.
Councilmember Zaluski.
Here.
Councilmember McDermott.
Here.
Okay, we have 6 present, 1 absent, and we'll go right into the presentation of the agenda. We have 2 items. One is an ordinance to waive the fees for the pools. And, you know, I know that the mayor announced that under the executive order, he waives the fees, but I mean, I've looked under the charter and I've looked under the declaration, and I would hope that the council proceed to waive the fees, as I don't feel that the mayor has that authority to waive the fees without the council's approval. And, you know, certainly we can talk about that when we get to it, but I'm just fully disclosing this to my colleagues, and I feel as the legislative branch, it's our duty to waive the fees accordingly. So that's that. And we have a resolution with Councilmember Steele, Councilmember Zaluski, Councilmember McDermott, and Councilmember Cummings. And we have quite a few folks. We have about 33 folks who have written in regarding that resolution. So I am going to request for the public forum that these be read before we vote, because obviously, you know, at the last meeting, we decided to do it after the meeting, but they were not pertaining specifically toward a resolution. So saying that I would like these read before we act. And so I'll ask Mara. And I know her and Councilmember Steele have decided to split the public forum comments. So I would ask Mara to begin. I don't know if you're doing the first 16 or 17 and Sue's doing the others, but if you guys want to take that away, we'll go right into the public forum. Okay?
Yeah, I'll start with the first 17 and then Council Member Steele will follow. I just want to preface this by saying we did receive about 11 other emails from people who either did not clarify that they wanted their comments read into the record or did not provide an address. I did respond to everyone I got an email from, but I didn't hear back from 11 people, which is why, you know, if they're listening, that's why their comments are not being read, but we can certainly add them to a future, you know, public forum if they want to respond. So just, you know, everyone out there, make sure to specify that you are writing specifically for the public forum and to please provide your address. So our first comment is from Donna Rourke on North Lake Avenue. She says, I am requesting that you stand up and back up our officers. They work tirelessly to protect and serve all of its residents. Do not follow the masses and defund this police department. They need us now more than ever. I support the BLM movement. I understand racism and bigotry exists. I do not discount its existence. I cannot ignore the increase in gun and gang violence that is rampant in our city. The officers need our support. I can't imagine how disheartening it is to work as an officer who is not feeling the support of the community. Please take this into consideration prior to deciding. The second statement is from Justin Cox on 6th Avenue. As a business owner of 3 businesses in Troy, New York, and a property owner of 3 buildings, myself and my wife and family do not support any type of defunding or funding change to the Troy Police Department, nor do we support any outside interference with their internal operations. Troy PD do a phenomenal job of taking care of our city, especially with all they deal with. If our council members and city hall officials would step up and be present in the everyday operations of the city, for example, take the time to be involved with the community and these protests, walk your streets, talk to your constituents firsthand, then I believe we would see a huge improvement on the relationship, which in turn would create a better dialogue between residents of the city and the elected officials and police officers. We also do not support being a sanctuary city. I myself immigrated here from England and have seen firsthand the damage done by uncontrolled immigration. There is a process, and it is possible for anyone with enough drive and determination to achieve the goal of U.S. citizenship the right way. We will be reallocating all of our assets and interests to another country if these changes that are being proposed come to fruition, as I believe these as a resolution will only create more devastating and disparity from a concerned Troy, New York resident and his family. Third statement is from the League of Women Voters of Rensselaer County, Judy Meyer, co-president, and Shirley Buell, co-president. Our League of Women Voters of Rensselaer County would like to support the work of the Troy City Council in responding to the Black Lives Matter movement in the upcoming resolution. We congratulate you on taking quick, constructive action and wish you every success. We know that the Troy Police already has working relationships with some Troy social agencies and community groups, and we trust that the new committee can build on that work. The next statement is from Jenna Haffey from Pauling Avenue. My name is Jenna Haffey, and I am a resident of Troy, New York, residing on Pauling Avenue. I am writing to support the resolution establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. It is my hope that this acknowledgement of the senseless murders of George Floyd and all other Black victims of senseless police brutality, including incidents here in Troy, is the first step toward creating concrete reform in our community that focuses on justice and equality for all Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the city. Furthermore, City Council could easily propose some changes without further deliberation that would show a stronger resolution on their part, including a civilian review board with subpoena power, make police disciplinary records publicly available. Other cities in New York have moved quickly on this. Propose some initial divestment from Troy PD and redirection of that money to community-led projects. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next statement is from Raquel Vejo, a resident on 4th Street. My name is Raquel Vejo. I'm a resident of Troy on 4th Street. I write to you today regarding Resolution 71 and the formation of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. I write to express my disappointment in this council in light of the public support for the Black Lives Matter movement nationally and Troy for Black Lives locally, and the council's dearth of purposeful legislation regarding systemic racism in our city. It is clear from Resolution 71 that many of our city council members see that the past months of activism throughout our nation are the result of centuries of violence and brutality towards Black people. The tone of the resolution regarding structural and systemic racism are clear demonstrations that the council, to some extent, are willing to contend with our nation's brutal history and even present. However, the resolution fails to extend this consciousness right where it is needed most: the role that our policing and criminal justice systems have played in perpetuating these cycles of violence and abuse. When 11,000 people marched in our city, they weren't chanting vague chants about systemic oppression. The chants were specific. We want justice. We want justice for Demeek McDonald and for Edson Thevenin. We have had enough of our racist police who have, for too long, operated without oversight, with inflated budgets, without consequence. I understand that some form of committee and report work needs to be undertaken for compliance with Governor Cuomo's Executive Order number 203. However, it shouldn't come as a surprise if constituents are doubtful about this committee, the process of its constitution, the representation of its members, and what will be done with the report it produces. Your compliance in establishing this committee is the barest minimum work this council can undertake. Other municipalities have already shown us that city councils are capable of doing more on their own. Actions include, for example, making police disciplinary records publicly available. When 11,000 gathered in Troy, it wasn't a coincidence. We were rallied by Black-led grassroots organizations, and the work was locally spearheaded by Troy for Black Lives. You continue not to acknowledge them or work with their clear demands at any level. Those demands did not include listening sessions, but did include a civilian review board with subpoena power and a move towards defunding the Troy PD. When will you begin to listen to these demands and to those of us who continue to write at each meeting for you to heed them? While I urge all council members today to vote in favor of Resolution 71, I also urge all of you yet again to move towards something bolder. With kind regards, Rick Alvejo. The next statement. My name is Sean Collins, and I am a Troy resident living in South Troy and a constituent of Ken Zalewski's district. I am the treasurer for the Troy Area Labor Council, AFL-CIO, whose affiliated local unions represent over 10,000 workers in Troy and Rensselaer County. I am writing in support for Troy for Black Lives and the broader movement for Black Lives, and in utter disappointment that the best Troy City Council can do in this moment is Resolution 71. In this resolution, you rightly describe what happened to George Floyd as a senseless murder, and that as a result of it, there is renewed focus on structural and systemic racism throughout our culture. What it does not say is who murdered George Floyd and how this structural and systemic racism manifests itself. It was the Minneapolis Police Department that murdered George Floyd, and it is police departments across the country that perpetuate and enforce structural and systemic racism. Millions of people nationwide marched and rallied, demanding that the police finally be reined in. In Troy, the 11,000 that attended the Rally for Black Lives did so demanding justice for Edson Thevenin, Demique McDonald, and other victims of our brutal police department. But they also were demanding that our police be reined in immediately. Other cities, Rochester, Utica, New York City, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, Hudson, Kingston, to name a few, took immediate steps, including but not limited to releasing disciplinary records of police officers, cutting departmental budgets, or freezing any new hires. Being compliant with new state law and Governor Cuomo's executive order is the bare minimum. The council can and must do more. The example set by other municipalities makes this clear. We do not need further study, and we do not need more listening forums and town halls to discuss this further. We certainly do not need to present a report to Mayor Patrick Madden. We already know what he does when a report that implicates one of police officers. When a report that implicates one of police officers, he covers it up. 11,000 people already held that listening forum. It is time that you heard them. It is time you take action. It is time to stop kicking the can down the road, and it is time to lead. In the press, Councilmember Steele said that she is listening and responding. As of yet, there is no evidence of that. Troy for Black Lives issued several demands, and it is time this council act on them. Those demands include a civilian police review board with teeth, that Troy stands with immigrants and against the county who collaborates with federal immigration authorities, and diverting funds away from law enforcement. If you are not acting on those demands, you are not listening. If you are not listening, what are you good for? How many more have to die and be brutalized for you to actually do something of consequence and with actual impact? By all means, pass this resolution, but recognize that it is not enough. Thank you. Regards, Sean Collins, 3rd Street. The next statement. This July 16th, the Troy City Council are voting on the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. While the resolution finally acknowledges the senseless murder of George Floyd and systemic racism in our country, it fails to extend that acknowledgement to how it is enacted in our own city and specifically by the Troy Police Department. Sure, this might be the first step, and a report of some type is required by Governor Cuomo's Executive Order number 203. But what will it take for our city to acknowledge demands laid at their doorstep by Troy for Black Lives? They create additional uncompensated labor for our community members. Many questions remain unanswered. Will there be transparency in the nomination process? Will there be at least 60% representation in the work group of communities most affected by police violence and brutality, as we demand for the Civilian Review Board? This committee is meant to be comprised of community leaders, clergy, police, and public safety professionals, representatives of businesses and nonprofit organizations. Are they expecting that cops should have a say in their own reform? City Council could easily propose some changes without further deliberation that would show stronger resolution on their part, including a civilian review board with subpoena power, make police disciplinary records publicly available. Other cities in New York State have moved quickly on this. Propose some initial divestment from Troy PD and redirection of that money to community-led projects. May all auspicious signs come to this environment. Michael, Fifth Avenue. Excuse me. My name is Jamie Kraus. I have been a resident of Troy since 2009. I write to you today to express my thoughts and concerns with Resolution 71, establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. While this is a step in the right direction for Troy's acknowledgement of Black Lives Matter, the time for action has been upon us for some time. You have told us that this will be a slow process, and I understand that change takes time, but municipalities around the country are already enacting significant changes to their policing, and Troy is too far behind the curve. How long will you make Troy's Black community wait to be acknowledged and heard? How many more months will they have to look on and wonder if their lives are important enough for change to come? The message is clear, and it comes straight from the organizers at Troy for Black Lives. 11,000 people filled our streets on June 7th amidst a global pandemic to show you that Black Lives Matter. Were you there? Were you watching? You acknowledged the wrongful death of George Floyd without a whisper of the wrongful death of our neighbor, Edson Thevenin. The resolution mentions that work group members will come from a diverse section of community involvement, but not racial demographics. The makeup of this group should reflect those most impacted by police violence, similar to the makeup of the Police Review Board. Your timeline also reflects what could be over 30 meetings between September and April. This work group calls on these community members to donate their time to fix their own community while you are compensated to represent all Troy residents. Please know that we are paying attention and we will not be deterred by bureaucratic delays, apathy, or silence. Caring for the lives of Troy's Black community is not political, it's human. Please do not consider this to be an either-or situation, but rather an absolute must for the livelihood of all Trojans. With strengthened resolve, Jamie Kraus, Woodrow Court. The next statement. My name is Steve Pierce. I am the Executive Director of Media Alliance in North Troy, where we operate the Sanctuary for Independent Media, the Nature Lab Urban Environmental Education Center, WOOC 105.3 FM, and numerous other community programs. I am writing to express my support for the Black Lives Matter movement and the Troy City Council resolution establishing a Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. My life's experience, especially working in North Troy for over the past 15 years, confirms that racism is marginalizing, discriminating against, and harming Black people and all people of color, and adversely affecting their opportunities for education, housing, employment, healthcare, and other necessities of civil life. I agree with the resolution that we need to seek local solutions so that regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, disability, gender identity, or sexual orientation, we may truly become a nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. The Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group is an important step in that direction. Thank you for allowing me to express my support for this initiative. Steve from First Avenue. The next statement. I am writing this a couple of hours after watching the Rensselaer County Legislature become indignant at the idea of giving the tamest possible recognition to the Black Lives Matter movement. Those who opposed will one day find that they were undeniably on the wrong side of history. You can avoid that shame. The sense of love and community at the Troy Rally for Black Lives was awe-inspiring. 11,000 people marched, keenly aware that it was long past time for another civil rights movement. This resolution, while superior to what I'd read coming from the legislature, is still barely even a first step. But at the very least, I beg you all to take that step. There were 11,000 of us. Also, you guys are going to make sure those pools are safe, right? Like 500% safe. Zach Guthrie from 8th Avenue. The next statement. My name is Hannah Vander Kolk, and I am a Troy resident and taxpayer. I am writing to express my thoughts and concerns about Resolution 71, even as I urge the passing of this resolution tonight as a small step in the right direction to acknowledge Black Lives Matter. However, the Troy Community Justice Services Work Group is too little, too late. We need to see real and robust change that protects the lives of Black people in our community. Troy for Black Lives, formerly Justice for Danique, along with other Black-led grassroots groups, organized a powerful and peaceful rally of 11,000 people on June 7th. The city of Troy has still failed to recognize this profound effort and the communities behind it. Instead, Mayor Madden claimed some kind of credit for the success of the rally with no mention of the many, many community members who made the rally happen and kept it safe. In addition, Troy for Black Lives has issued specific and comprehensive demands which have also not been recognized or addressed. The city needs to meet with and humble themselves to the guidance of these organizers. The formation of Troy Community Justice Services Work Group without acknowledgement of the work of Troy for Black Lives is an insult and a misstep. The work has been and is already being done. In addition, the work group proposal does not specifically state the demographic makeup of its members, which needs to reflect those most impacted by police violence, nor does it acknowledge the immense amount of work this group would require and move to compensate its members. Other municipalities throughout New York State have already gone much further in addressing police violence and transparency and the well-being of Black communities. This group is clearly the barest minimum the council can undertake in response to Governor Cuomo's mandate. You can and need to go further. Which side of this historical moment of opportunity for change will you be on? Please know that we are watching your every move right now and demand you do better. We will not go away. We will remain committed to justice for Black people in Troy. We will not stop supporting the Thevenin family and demanding the end of the cover-up of his wrongful death. We will not stop demanding justice for Danique McDonald. I implore you to be courageous and bold and do the right thing. This is a human rights issue, not a political issue. The safety, well-being, and thriving of all Trojans is impossible without a firm commitment to action that protects and lifts up Black life. This is about all of us. Sincerely, Hannah Vanderkolk, Oak Street. The next statement. I fully support the Reimagine Troy resolution in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, number 71-1. And especially the creation of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. For way too long, people of color have been targeted by law enforcement and denied the legal and social support that has been expected and granted to the white residents of this city, state, and country. The Reimagine Troy resolution is one small step to redress these inequalities. I expect that all members of the City Council who represent everyone in this city, including Black, brown, and white people, will support this effort to start working towards justice for all people of Troy. Thank you, Drea Lianza, Fifth Avenue. The next statement. This is Andrew Lynn of the Hillside neighborhood writing to urge you to take bigger and better steps in the right direction. But first, in the hopes that this letter will be read aloud, I need to hear the members of this committee say his name. Say his name, Edson Thevenin. Say his name, Edson Thevenin. As we reference the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others, we must remember that our cops murdered too, and it would seem that some in power go to great lengths to cover that fact up. If you are able to sleep at night, perhaps Edson will visit you in your dreams. I understand that there is a resolution to form a working group in support of the Black Lives Matter movement being voted on this evening. I hope that this will pass. I also hope that the work that Ken Zalewski referred to last week is comprised of more than just the formation of this group. It is very important that this be a group comprised mainly of those affected by most by police violence, poor people and people of color. Please work to open the halls of government to those who may not look like yourselves in this critical moment. Which side are you on, Council? Which side are you on? It cannot be said enough, and indeed you should plan on hearing it until it becomes a reality. There must be a police conduct review board with subpoena power, and like other cities of our scale, Troy should make public past, present, and future records of police conduct such that we may hold those patrolling our city accountable with the proper context. Lastly, I must share this anecdote. I was at Stewart's with my 8-year-old daughter, and a couple of EMT workers approached the store as we were exiting. They were in uniform and happened to be African American. "Wait, are those guys cops?" she said. "I didn't think there were Black police," she exclaimed. I explained that indeed there are a few but not many, and that the uniforms were confusing, and we talked about how it is a great example of institutional racism, a concept she speaks a lot about these days. This innocent misperception speaks volumes. Not much is normal right now, but apparently it is normal for a kid to live in Troy for 8 years and never see a dark-skinned police officer. Please honor Black lives and attempt to find yourself on the right side of history as we make it together. Thank you for your attention. Andrew Lynn, 9th Street. The next statement, my name is David Banks and I reside on Bell Avenue. I would like to take a moment to comment on the creation of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. I understand many people with kind hearts and good intentions want this to pass, and while I would not actively stand in the way of it, I am disgusted that this is the best the council has to offer right now. Just last week, I listed some of the many known, publicized, and in some cases, litigated acts of extrajudicial violence that the Troy Police Department has been caught perpetrating. Out of respect for all of you, I will assume you always forget these facts, since you have to be indifferent to human suffering to know these things and not act swiftly. Remember a June 2010 incident when officers Christopher Pole, Charles Castle, Joseph McNall, and George Anderson assaulted James Foley during a needlessly violent arrest of Shaquem Miller. Remember in June 2012 when Brian Hooley was beaten by Officer Kyle Jones, who, according to the Troy Record, allegedly did so because Jones disagreed with how Hooley administered a Facebook page. Remember Theodore Ralph, who in 2013 was the third completely innocent bystander to be bitten by one of Troy PD's canines. Remember the Kokopelli saga and the clear caught-on-tape violence exacted on people for the high crime of peacefully leaving a bar. Remember that your police department, the one you oversee as elected officials, had to be investigated by the FBI in 2014 for civil rights violations. Remember the 2015 case where officers Justin Ash, Dominic Comitau, Martin Fursanity were charged with excessive force on John Larkins, who, according to the Troy Record, filed charges of malicious prosecution and excessive force against 3 officers and false arrest and false imprisonment against one of the 3, said he was not happy with the settlement but felt he needed to protect himself. Again, your own constituent felt the need to take a settlement to protect himself from his own police department. Remember Sergeant Ron Epstein and Detective John A. Comitau Jr., who were allowed to retire after they were involved in a 2017 illegal search and seizure that had them charged with bribery in addition to illegally entering a property. In the last few years, we must remember the murder of Edson Thevenin by Sergeant Randall French, the near-death experience of Demique McDonald after Officer Gerard Eiler shot him in the face, and the incident just last year when one of your officers used a canine to bite a man while he was being forcibly taken into custody. And for your own sake, remember that Troy PBA President and Council President Mantello's nephew, Nicholas Laviano, told this body that he would gladly violate your resolutions if he disagrees with them. If you have any respect for not just yourselves but the office you hold, then please do something more than form another committee to investigate a deadly problem that is right in front of your eyes. Stop with the delays, stop with the denials, and save your constituents' lives. The next statement. My name is Ellie Irons. I am a homeowner living on 9th Street in Troy. My statement today is in reference to Resolution 71, establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. I am glad to see the Council moving to respond to Governor Cuomo's Executive Order Number 203, requiring police review and reform at the city level. However, I am concerned about how the work group will be formed, how quickly it will act, and how satisfactory the results will be. Resolution 71 acknowledges the murder of George Floyd as a catalyst for the recent national uprisings for racial justice. This is a good first step in acknowledging that systemic racism and police brutality go hand in hand. But the resolution fails to look inward. There is no mention of the many instances that the Troy Police Department has participated in the brutalizing of Black members of our community, including Demique McDonald and Edson Thevenin. As it has across the nation, police brutality and activism against it were occurring in Troy long before George Floyd's death. This failure to identify specific events in our own local context leaves me concerned about how serious you are about real reform. I am also concerned about the process for convening the working group members. You state that the working group will come from a diverse section of community involvement, but the resolution does not include any specific requirements about racial makeup. Our local Black-led activist groups, like Troy for Black Lives, have made it clear that any civilian police review board should be made up of at least 60% representation from groups most affected by police violence. This should also apply to this working group. Black and other similarly affected people of color from our community must be prioritized. Additionally, I see that participation in the working group will be uncompensated. This is problematic. It has the potential to reinforce existing inequities in terms of who has the time, bandwidth, and privilege to set aside unpaid time to participate. Finally, there are actions this council could take right now without the slow bureaucratic process of a working group. Examples from other cities include making police disciplinary records publicly available. On the subject of transparency, as mentioned prior, you could also directly address the murder of community member Edson Thevenin at the hands of the Troy PD in 2016. Your silence on his murder and the subsequent cover-up continues to reverberate in this moment of heightened attention to police brutality. In closing, I am writing in solidarity with the demands of Troy for Black Lives. Their demands outline the vast scale of the work needed. Because Resolution 71 is one small step in that direction, I urge all council members to vote in its favor, but to do so knowing this will not satisfy our demands for justice and an end to police brutality in Troy. Best regards, Ellie Irons, 9th Street. The next statement, the resolution you have written to vote on this evening is a sham, and we are tired of racism and of you politicians doing nothing about it. Edson Thevenin was executed in our city, paid with our tax dollar by a police officer, and you gave the police officer a funeral with honors. We don't want to honor murderers. We want justice for Edson Thevenin, Danique McDonald, and every victim of police abuse. I would like to write a positive letter to make you change your mind in the right direction. Subpoena power for the board, reduce the police budget, release all disciplinary records, etc. But I have come to the conclusion that I need to ask you to resign so that you let new people with fresh ideas and energy take over the government of our city. You have failed us. You have failed the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and minorities of this city, and you don't want to have the courage to acknowledge it and change direction. And now you are further dishonoring the victims of racism with this empty, toothless resolution to make you feel good. Thank you, Rafael Varela, Hill Street. The next statement, my name is Connor Armbruster, and I live in Troy on 12th Street. This letter is in regards to Resolution 71, outlining the formation of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group, which appears to signal the council's support of the Black Lives Matter movement nationally, but falls short of the demands of Troy for Black Lives. The resolution is clear in its acknowledgement of our country's history of violence and racism, both direct and systemic towards Black people. It seems that the council is willing to take steps to address ongoing problems in the city of Troy in response to the 11,000-strong protests that occurred here. Upon reading this legislation, however, I wondered whether the council heard the demands of those 11,000 protesters who were clear and specific in their calls to the city government with regards to systemic racism in policing, justice, and incarceration. I'd like to list several of them here, trusting that you'll respond to them by taking bolder action than is laid out in Resolution 71. Justice for Danique McDonald and Edson Thevenin, establishment of a civilian review board with subpoena power and no less than 60% representation by people most impacted by violence and police violence, a full and impartial investigation of every instance of use of deadly force by a police officer, the appointment of the Attorney General as an independent investigator and prosecutor in all such cases, the disentanglement of the county government with ICE, exploration and creation of community-based treatment alternatives to criminal justice, especially for youth, the mentally ill, and in cases involving drugs or substance abuse and sex work. I urge all City Council members to vote in favor of the proposed Resolution 71. However, I'm most faithful that the Council will quickly and decisively respond to the demands of Black-led organizations in upcoming legislation. Sincerely, Connor Armbruster, 12th Street. And I will turn over to Councilmember Steele for the next half of our comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Steele. Thank you, Mara.
Yes, thank you, Mara. The next email comes from Nathan Meltz. My name is Nathan Meltz, a citizen of Troy living on Sauce Avenue. I'm writing regarding the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. When forming this committee, I urge the City Council to make sure the committee is stacked with community members most affected by police misconduct, Black people. Please don't fill it with police, expecting them to reform themselves. Particularly members of the Troy PBA, have consistently shown that their priorities are not to protect and serve the citizens of Troy, but to protect and serve their own ranks from oversight, municipal or civilian. Please redirect the police budget towards civil services. Alternative models exist, like the CAHOOTS model in Eugene, Oregon, that will save money by redirecting 911 calls to mental health organizations, preventing opportunities for police violence against citizens. Please create a civilian review board with subpoena power. Please make police records transparent. Our good cops have nothing to hide. Thank you for your time and consideration, Nathan Meltz. Next one, to Councilperson Mantello. As Council President and in your role as Minority Leader for the Republican Council People, I write to you to ask you to support Resolution 71, establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. While this is an imperfect response to Troy's overwhelming expression of unfair treatment of our Black community members by those sworn to protect us, it is an important first step. Councilperson Mantello, can you stand by your Black constituents right now? It's the lives of parents, partners, and children that are on the line. Consider these words from Cynthia Thevenin, Edson Thevenin's widow. By Friday of that week, that officer received immunity and they still had not released his body. I had to watch my 4-year-old run to the door and yell "Daddy" every time the door opened. I had to watch my 8-year-old have breakdown after breakdown. One night he cried so much that I couldn't even go into his room and lie to him one more time. So I just sat in the living room and cried myself. You can find the rest of Cynthia Thevenin's account of her husband's killing by the Troy Police Department on her Facebook account. Carmela, you have power in your role. What is your responsibility? Passing this resolution is literally the least you can do. And to the entire city council, this really does feel like the least you can do. I hope you have clear plans for ensuring this work group is led by and is mostly comprised of Black Trojans who are most affected by the TPD's unequal treatment. And because Black children are born with an average 1 penny to every white American's dollar, I hope you are planning on paying the Black community members who are reliant upon to do this work effectively. Without providing remuneration, you are ensuring a Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services work group made up of those who have enough resources to donate their time to such an effort. You'll be ensuring wealthier, probably whiter folks will have the privilege of serving and having their concerns heard. In contrast to the proposed work group, the Albany Common Council has already introduced several police reform proposals. Albany proposals include legislation that would tie funding for the city's police review board to a percentage of the police department's budget and give the board enhanced powers. The board would receive 1% of the police budget, or $540,000, to fund outside investigations into allegations of excessive force or civil rights violations. Another reform would require the city police department to closely track demographic data on police stops and arrests. Another would prevent officers from switching off their body cameras without a supervisor's permission. Why is Troy so far behind? Melissa Bromley, Springwood Manor. P.S. Councilperson McDermott, in my last letter, I requested a direct response from you, and I'm still waiting to hear back. And she provides a resource for us, a cheap race-neutral way to close the racial wealth gap from the Atlantic. The next email, my name is Abby Kinchy, and I live on Sauce Avenue in Troy. I am glad to see that you will be voting to begin an effort to address systemic racism and social justice in our community. However, we don't really need a working group. We need bold and decisive actions. For example, right now, you could create a civilian review board with subpoena power and full representation of our diverse city, make police disciplinary records publicly available, propose some initial divestment from Troy Police Department and redirection of that money to community-led projects. We want justice for Danique McDonald and for Edson Thevenin. I am therefore troubled to see that you have proposed the inclusion of police officers in the proposed work group. We have seen how police officers have routinely disrupted and resisted even modest attempts at accountability in the city over the last decade, including the cover-up of Mr. Thevenon's murder. I commend your efforts to pursue reform, but urge you to attend to the demands of Troy for Black Lives. Sincerely, Abby Kinchy. The next email, my name is Elizabeth Press. I moved to Troy in 2015 with my partner, who I gently convinced to study at RPI because I wanted to live here again. As parents of a toddler, we love our friends and community and will do all we can to fight for equality for all of us. To that note, I am writing today to thank you for proposing Resolution 71, establishing Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. Resolution 71 is acknowledgement that Black lives do matter, and this resolution is a step in the right direction. I wish you would follow the lead of other municipalities around the country that are already enacting significant changes. Troy is simply proposing to make a working group that will meet between September 2020 and April 2021. I would hope that this outlined timetable is a worst case scenario and you would move much faster than this. Regardless, it is time consuming and taxing work, so I urge you to compensate folks for the work that they will do to make Troy a better place to live for all of us. Troy for Black Lives and the 11,000 people that showed up on June 7th amidst a global pandemic to say Black Lives Matter need a voice in this working group. We need you to hear their demands. We want a civilian review board with subpoena power. We want police disciplinary records publicly available. Other cities in New York State have moved quickly on this, and please propose some initial divestment from Troy Police Department and redirection of that money to community-led projects. Please vote yes today. Please do not go through the words of this resolution with a fine-tooth comb and find abstract reasons to vote no. Please do not say that this is being worked on already by the mayor or governor. You are your own body. We need this working group formed. Thank you, Elizabeth Press, Jacob Street. The next one, my name is Starletta Smith. I have been a resident of Troy all my life. I have raised my family here. I have attended higher education here. I bought a house here. I started my career here. I say this to say I love Troy. My family loves Troy, and being a Black family in this community, I come with mixed feelings. I am filled with pride in my community, yet feel a deep sense of shame as we ask our leaders to acknowledge Black Lives Matter. I write to you today to express my thoughts and concerns with Resolution 71, establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. While this is a step in the right direction for Troy's acknowledgement of Black Lives Matter, the time for action has been upon us for some time. You have told us that this will be a slow process, and I understand that change takes time, but municipalities around the country are already enacting significant changes to their policing, and Troy is too far behind the curve. How long will you make Troy's Black community wait to be acknowledged and heard? How many more months will we have to work on and wonder if our lives are important enough for a change to come? The message is clear, and it comes straight from the organizers at Troy for Black Lives. 11,000 people filled our streets on June 7th amidst a global pandemic to show you that Black lives matter. Were you there? Were you watching? You acknowledged the wrongful death of George Floyd without a whisper of the wrongful death of our brother Edson Thevenon. The resolution mentions that work group members will come from a diverse section of community involvement, but not racial demographics. The makeup of this group should reflect those most impacted by police violence, similar to the makeup of the Police Review Board. Your timeline also reflects what could be over 30 meetings between September and April. This work group calls on these community members to donate their time to fix our own community while you are compensated to represent all Troy residents. Please know that we are paying attention and we will not be deterred by bureaucratic delays, apathy, or silence. Caring for the lives of Troy's Black community is not political, it's human. Please do not consider this to be an either-or situation, but rather an absolute must for the livelihood of all Trojans with strengthened resolve. Starletta Smith, 3rd Avenue. Next email. My name is Coley Collin, and I live in South Troy. I don't have much to write, but I want you to know that I am watching and waiting for you to step up to this moment. Be on the right side of history and act on the demands of Troy for Black lives. If you care about the city you're serving, you'll do more than listen. You're faced with a special opportunity to move toward real justice here, and you have a citizenry that is disinterested in half measures. Sincerely, Coley Collins, 2nd Street. The next one comes from Bob Blackman, Ahern Avenue. I support the resolution, however, I would prefer that the first sentence read, George Floyd and Edson Thevenin. It's like most people are in denial that Troy police murdered a man, as did the police in Minneapolis. Here it was police bullets that killed an unarmed Black man. In Minneapolis, it was a cop's knee. Otherwise, the cases are the same. Nevertheless, I support the resolution and urge its passage. So many people are claiming that the Black Lives Matter movement is anti-police. It is not. I lived and worked in Mississippi in the 60s and 70s at the height of the civil rights movement. And the denial of racism here today and there at that time is sadly similar. It's past time for Troy, New York to enter the 21st century and stop being like Mississippi. I urge passage of this resolution. Bob Blackman. The next one. My name is Laura Rabineau, and I live on Madison Street in District 5, South Troy. I wrote to you ahead of the last meeting of the City Council to voice concern over inaction regarding systemic racism in our city and in our country more broadly. I write to you today regarding Resolution 71 and the formation of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. While I am glad to see you take action, I am concerned that this is not the kind of action we need, and it is not the kind of action that 11,000 people came out to march in support of in our city recently. In particular, I'm disappointed that this legislation does not appear to take up any of the needed changes that Troy for Black Lives and other groups have so clearly outlined. These include measures that you could put into legislation today, as reestablishing a civilian review board with subpoena power, making police disciplinary records publicly available, as other cities in New York have already done, proposing some level of funding to be redirected from the Troy Police Department to community-led projects. I am also concerned, as someone who has worked in and studied public policy, about the choice of this particular type of legislation to address such a critical and urgent set of issues. There is a significant body of research on public policy processes that has demonstrated that public bodies like working groups or advisory boards, which appear to offer opportunities for greater public input and involvement of stakeholders in policy process, are too often political tools that are used to delay action, tools that too often don't result in better public policy and in policy that is less impacted by the critical moment we're in, because unlike all of you, residents don't get paid to continue to do this work. And so delay works quite literally, works against the will of the people. I understand that some form of committee and report work needs to separately be undertaken for compliance with Governor Cuomo's executive order number 203, but you already know what people in Troy need and want. Given the troubling actions of our county legislature this week, I nonetheless urge you to pass this legislation. It is not enough, but it is important that Black residents in Troy at least know that you stand with them in some way, and that you are able to commit to the very minimum in affirming that Black lives matter. And then I urge you to continue the work and to introduce legislation that more urgently responds to the historic moment in which you find yourselves in a position of power from which to effect positive change. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next email. I grew up in Lansingburg and am writing you today about Resolution 71, establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. Although a step in the right direction, this is only a beginning, and I'd like to see more action to truly support Troy's Black community. The organizers of Troy for Black Lives have clearly stated what needs to happen in our city to truly protect our residents. More than 30% of our population is non-white and subject to dangerous policing habits. Please turn to the Troy for Black Lives demands for guidance in how to address the situations at hand. Thank you for listening to the concerns that I'm expressing and the voices of all speaking up for greater action tonight. Sincerely, Amy Halloran, 10th Street. The next one, I am writing to you to voice a limited qualified support for Resolution 71, and I'll save you the trouble of saying the resolution's absurd title out loud again. Please provide transparency about the selection criteria for the work group's members. That work group's efficacy depends entirely on who you select. I understand the position you're in. Executive Order 203, called the Say Their Name agenda, has required some observable process on your part in order to receive state funding. I would like to enter into the record a quote from that executive order. Whereas these deaths in New York State include those of Anthony Baez, Amadou Diallo, Sami Zango, Sean Bell, Ramarley Graham, Patrick Dorsman, Akai Gurley, and Eric Garner, amongst others. In other states include Oscar Grant, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Laquan McDonald, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, Philando Castile, Antoine Rose Jr., Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, amongst others. Now I'd like to quote from your own resolution. Whereas the senseless murders of George Floyd and many other people of color. I would like to remind the City Council that the executive order from the governor is called Say Their Names. Why is it that your resolution does not have the courage to do just that? Say their names. I think an important baby step to holding yourselves accountable to what we're talking about here. Council members, you represent all residents of Troy, including Black friends and neighbors, including the family of Edson Thevenin, including Damik McDonald. Are you willing to say their names? Thank you for your consideration. Dan Pfeiffer, 9th Street. The next one, my name is Carolyn Nagy, and I am a Troy resident living on 2nd Street and a constituent of Ken Zalewski's district. I am writing in support of Troy for Black Lives and the broader movement for Black Lives, and in utter disappointment that the best Troy City Council can do at this moment is Resolution 71. While a resolution should be passed, it is sorely inadequate to meet the necessities of the moment. It is clear that the Troy City Council does not intend to meet the demands of the 11,000 that attended the Rally for Black Lives last month. They did so demanding justice for Edson Thevenin, Damik McDonald, and other victims of our brutal police department. But they also were demanding that our police be reined in immediately. Other cities, Rochester, Utica, New York City, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, Hudson, Kingston, to name a few, took immediate steps, including but not limited to releasing disciplinary records of police officers, cutting departmental budgets, or freezing new hires. Being compliant with new state law and Governor Cuomo's executive order is the bare minimum. The council can and must do more. The example set by other municipalities makes this clear. We do not need further study, and we do not need more listing forums and town halls to discuss this further. It is time to stop kicking the can down the road, and it is time to lead. Troy for Black Lives issued several demands, and it is time this council act on them. Those demands include a civilian review board with teeth, that Troy stand with immigrants against the county who collaborates with federal immigration authorities, and diverting funds away from law enforcement. Thank you for your opportunity to comment. Sincerely, Carolyn Nagy, 2nd Street. Next one. My name is Branda Miller, and I am a resident of Lansingburg. I have been part of the Troy community since 1991 and have worked since as a professor at RPI. I love Troy and the evolution it has had in the past several decades. As Troy reimagines our possibility, it is essential to have a deeper generative dialogue about the systemic racism that exists here. For this reason, I strongly urge you to take the step today regarding Resolution 71 and the formation of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. I write to express my disappointment in this council in light of the public support for the Black Lives Matter national movement nationally and Troy for Black Lives locally, and the council's dearth of purposeful legislation regarding systemic racism in our city. When 11,000 people marched in our city, they weren't chanting vague chants about systemic oppression. The chants were specific. We want justice. We want justice for Damique McDonald and for Edson Thevenin. We've had enough of our racist police who have for too long operated without oversight, with inflated budgets, without consequence. We hope that our neighbors and our communities can join together in this challenging time to reach higher, to fight inequities in Troy, and to realize the best quality of life for our great city. 11,000 people, 11,000 gathered in Troy as a peaceful affirmation that we can come together in unity. I urge all city council members today to vote in favor of Resolution 71. We all deserve this to realize the greatest future for all who live in Troy. With hope, Brandon Miller, First Avenue. The next one. My name is Angela Beeler, and I am a resident of Hillside in Troy. I'm writing regarding Resolution 71 and the formation of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group. The horrific murder of George Floyd and the resulting worldwide protest movement has forced many who have been resistant to recognizing the necessity for broad systemic change to finally do so. Let us acknowledge that it was the protests that brought us here. The organizers who have been working and strategizing for a long time to push for justice and change. Unlike the county legislature that voted to praise the police for the work of Troy Black Lives and the successful June rally of 11,000 plus people, let us acknowledge that it is the Black and brown organizers leading these movements in the streets and behind the scenes that have brought us here. So you are late, but we are glad to see this resolution emerge. What is missing in this resolution? It conveniently neglects to comment on Troy, New York, and the actions of Troy Police Department. The work of truly confronting systemic racism, white supremacy, and police violence is not convenient. It cannot please everyone. In order to truly do this work, to truly acknowledge that Black Lives Matter, we must confront the problems present in law enforcement at all levels, and that includes addressing abuse of power by the Troy Police Department. We have in our midst a committed organization who has presented very specific demands regarding racial justice in Troy. How will this working group address the demands of Troy for Black Lives, formerly Justice for Damique? These include an end police violence, the establishment of a civilian review board with subpoena power, the disentanglement of our city with ICE, the creation of a diversion programs away from criminal justice involvement to community-based treatment alternatives. City Council could easily propose some changes without further deliberation that would show stronger resolution on their part. I urge you to commit to this now as a part of the creation of this working group. The time for these changes was yesterday. A civilian review board with subpoena power and majority representation of those most impacted by police violence. Make police disciplinary records publicly available. Other cities in New York have moved quickly on this. Propose some initial divestment from Troy Police Department and redirection of that money to community-led projects. Push for thorough review of Edson Thevenin case and the release of all reports for the public to see. Additionally, how will the council compensate community participants? Will there be transparency in the nomination process? Will there be at least 60% representation in the work group of communities most affected by police violence and brutality, as we demand for the Civilian Review Board? This committee is meant to be comprised of community leaders, clergy, police, and public safety professionals, representatives of businesses and nonprofit organizations. Where's the space for our city and community to substantively address law enforcement reform? As Frederick Douglass wrote, Power concedes nothing without demand. I do not anticipate police involvement in this working group leading to much reform. Angela Beeler, Jacob Street, Troy, New York. Next one. My name is Rhea Drysdale and I live on Massachusetts Avenue in Troy. Should I disclose my full address? This is worrisome to many. Is it a requirement to share? Mine is easily identifiable online, but with a church in Lansingburg giving away AR-15s to the community, a congregant who is friends with many of you on Facebook that continues to digitally harass protesters, and the Troy Police Benevolent Association deleting and blocking the community from posting dissenting opinions, you can understand my hesitation in wanting to publicly state my address. Hopefully my street will suffice and we can continue. We're starting to get to know each other, so I'd like to call you your first names if I may. Carmela, Jim, Kim, Sue, Anasha, Ken, and Eileen. Thank you for listening, whether you have a choice in the matter or not. Thank you most of all for having your cameras on and giving us the respect of your face. Mayor Madden, I hope to see more of you in the future too. Also, thank you, Mara, for sharing our words. On the subject of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group, I will keep my points brief tonight. I appreciate the work being done to state for the record that Black Lives Matter. It appears the Rensselaer County Legislature couldn't agree on the subject, so I applaud you for getting this in writing. The work group is a step forward, but I hope you understand how small it feels to those impacted by violence, mass incarceration, food deserts, redlining, discrimination, and more. We still need a civilian review board with subpoena power to make police disciplinary records publicly available. Other cities in New York State have done so. To propose some initial divestment from Troy PD and redirect the money to community-led projects. Listen to the people, they have spoken. You are still not listening and acting. Thank you, Rhea Drysdale. The next one, to Councilperson Mantello, please support Resolution 71 establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Services Work Group. From Martin Luther King Jr., justice too long delayed is justice denied. Please help the Troy community and families such as the Thevenins find justice. We need accountability from our law enforcement. Sarah Bowen, Sauce Avenue. The next one, my name is Catherine McTighe. I am a recent graduate of Russell Sage College at 65 First Street in downtown Troy, and have worked at arts organizations in the city over the last 5 years. I appreciate your willingness to hear my comments as a non-residential Trojan who writes to you today regarding Resolution 71 and support of Troy for Black Lives. The outpouring of activism in defense of Black life across the country and in our city, where 11,000 of us came together to affirm the Black Lives Matter and to call for an end to state-sanctioned police violence, is a long overdue shift in cultural awareness and opinion. At the confluence of so many mounting national crises, a pandemic that disproportionately affects Black and Brown communities, massive amounts of unemployment unseen since the Great Depression, and a blatantly xenophobic federal government that protects billionaires and actively kills the poor and disenfranchised, we are in the midst of a powerful global uprising against racism and police brutality. It is disappointing to see that while this resolution acknowledges the Black Lives Matter movement and pledges to change the language the council uses in this resolution, once again fails to acknowledge the work of Troy for Black Lives or the demands they have specifically laid out before the council. It is understandable why your inclusion of police in your own reform in this resolution inspires a great deal of further mistrust and anger from your constituents, while you blatantly ignore their other demands. For example, a civilian review board with subpoena power, the releasing of police disciplinary records to the public, and divestment from Troy PD into community-led projects. I am asking City Council members today, from one white person to another, to intentionally work to lift the veil of assumption that the police force in Troy as it exists across the nation is an inherently good institution that benefits all communities equitably across the spectrums of race, gender, class, and ability. It does not. From the recent Rensselaer County Legislators meeting, where a resolution that simply acknowledged the fact that Black Lives Matter was labeled divisive and anti-police, shows that our representatives are severely disconnected from the lived realities of their constituents. With this in mind, I hope you understand that the instinct to protect Troy Police Department and other police forces in the greater capital region is an act of white supremacy. You must be willing to interrogate your biases and privilege if you want to successfully address these issues and create a safer Troy for your citizens. There is no justice or safety when you declare Black Lives Matter in public, but continue to coddle and protect the police force that oppresses Black lives in private. White supremacists don't only wear hoods and burn crosses. They seek positions of legislative power and then choose to wield it in oppressive ways that actively ignore the demands of their most oppressed citizen. They look like you. We see you, we are watching, and we will continue to speak out until you give Troy for Black Lives the acknowledgement they deserve and tangibly work with their demands. And we will continue long after. Regards, Catherine McTighe, Kenosha Street, Albany.
Yeah, we had agreed that the Albany ones, like last week, Waterford, we didn't read the outside Troy ones. I mean, if we start that, you know. So saying that the next one, Princeton Smith, Councilmember Steele, is also Myrtle Ave in Albany. We can record in the record. But Renee Powell.
Right, I'll read that.
Yep.
No, I thought I had it.
I can forward it if you'd like.
Sue, I have it. I can read it if you'd like.
That's fine. Yeah, thank you. I had it and it's disappeared. Thanks, Mara.
Okay. I am writing in support of the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Work Group. Working together is a step in the right direction to understanding the issues that have plagued the underserved community in Troy, New York, especially the Black and Brown communities. By acknowledging that there are inequities in the mission of this group to bring leaders of the community and city officials to have a dialogue about what is happening and working toward identifying reasonable solutions is the responsible thing to do, keeping the lines of communication open. This support is by no means an indication that this is the only vehicle that will resolve the issues that the community is dealing with. The problems stem from over 100 years of oppressive laws and activities. This group coming together is one of many actions that will be part of creating an environment that makes all feel respected and safe. Listening to learn directly from those that are affected by the inequalities that trouble the community is a major step to identifying solutions to fix the problems. Sincerely, Renee Powell, President, NAACP Troy Branch.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for all the folks who wrote in, and we will now move on to the agenda, if that's okay. Let's see, all right, no local laws. We have Ordinance 43, Ordinance amending the code of the City of Troy, Section 216-13, pool use fees and operating hours. Council President Mantello, Councilmember Gully, and Councilmember Ash McPherson. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Zaluski. Discussion. You know, I'll take the lead real quick. We actually did this last year in hopes that the South Troy pool would open. Unfortunately, it ran against some major obstacles and it did not open. We're super pleased, Mayor. The opening now is this Saturday at 1 o'clock, and this is certainly long overdue for our kids and residents in Troy. And I know a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of attention was put into the South Troy Pool. And I know that the deputy mayor, and I saw that you also commended Todd from engineering. And, I certainly just want to say this is just a really, really, really awesome project, and certainly very excited to see it open on Saturday. And our youth needs activities. We know that. I think there's a direct correlation with the increased violence and just not enough youth activities in our city. So this will hopefully fill part of that void, certainly not fill the whole void, but it's a step. And I just want to commend all the folks that really worked hard to get it open. 4 years is a long time, and it's absolutely gorgeous. If folks have a chance, there's a YouTube video that the mayor and the administration put online. It's very, very cool. And I was down there last week after it was built, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. So this is a proposal, and as I stated earlier, I know that the mayor stated through his executive order to waive the fees. I don't really know, quite frankly, if it's super clear in the order. I do know under the charter, it does talk about the emergency order, and saying that I just, for one, feel that the legislative body should waive these fees, and hopefully we can move forward, and hopefully it's unanimous.
Council President.
Yes, Council Member Zaluski.
Yeah, so I'm fully in agreement with this. I do think there's some ambiguity on whose job it is to waive the fees. But you know what? It really doesn't matter because we're going to do it. So let's just get it done. And, our citizens, especially our kids, will benefit from it.
Awesome. And it's funny that you say that, because somebody had said, well, what if the council doesn't waive them, et cetera? I said, we're going to get it done, and we're not going to play politics with waiving the fees. And this is awesome, everyone. And hopefully we can do more to ease the burden on some of the lower income families. All right. Further discussion? Anyone?
President?
Yes, Council Member Cummings.
I was just wondering if we could get an update from the mayor and for the public around the plans and practices with regard to how to keep it safe in this time, and while making sure that everyone still has the opportunity to enjoy the pool. So are there ideas around time limits, or what are the plans to
Okay.
if not via a fee to encourage
Right.
So
the public?
So
roll
will
through.
evolve depending on the demand at the pool. At this point in time, the limit in the pool is 50 individuals. We ask that people wear face masks when they're on the pool decking, and this will be explained to them as they come in. We will be collecting names and contact information in the event that we hope never arises, where we have to do contact tracing. If there is demand beyond the 50 at any given point in time, we're going to have to look at alternatives, maybe staggered times when people can come. I checked in with Albany and Cohoes. They have not run into a situation where they have exceeded the reduced capacity. Maybe a different story this weekend, as we're anticipating mid and upper 90-degree weather. So that's why I say some of this will have to evolve based on experience on the ground.
Council President,
Yes, Council Member Ash McPherson.
Mayor, are the dressing rooms, the lockers, the bathrooms, are they all going to be utilized?
The bathrooms will be available. The dressing rooms will not be available. So people should, I think it might have been mentioned in the press release, but I think people should come prepared to swim. if we, because we're going to have to go through periodically and clean everything. So it's just easier on the staff that's there, the lifeguarding staff, not to have to clean the changing rooms. It's also an interior area where, based on what we know at this point in time, virus more readily spreads. So the bathrooms, obviously, we do have to have those open, and we will. But
And
come in
sorry.
your bathing suit, Kim.
I apologize. I did not see the press release, so I'm just hearing this for the first time, so I apologize. So that's why I'm going to ask the questions. I hope you don't mind.
No,
So-
that's fine.
Are they going to be allowed to bring food in? Are they going to be allowed not to eat inside around the pool area? I'm just kind of getting a little information, if you don't mind.
That's a really good question. Maybe we could put out some clarifying points on that. I know the Boys and Girls Club is planning on providing meals on weekdays. So there will be some food there. I'll find out and we'll clarify that point.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is
And
there a, Council President? Sorry.
go ahead, Councilmember Cummings.
Is there a splash pad on site as well, or just the pool?
Yes, there is a splash pad on the other side of the building from the pool.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if that could sort of be used in the absence of showers and changing rooms to make sure people are clean going into the pool. I don't know how to set that up, but I could imagine that being helpful.
The splash pad will be operational, and generally it's restricted for little kids, to keep the little kids separate from the
Sure.
kids, because there's a lot of energy going on down there.
That makes sense.
And Mayor, a couple things. I had heard you say a limit of 50. Is there going to be a time limit for, like maybe an hour and a half for 50, only if there are kids waiting?
Well, again, it'll depend upon what we see, what
Okay.
happens on the ground. Albany and Cohoes have not had to do that. If we get people lining up, then we're going to have to set time limits. So it might be in a 2-hour block, 30 minutes to clean, another 2-hour block with other people, 30 minutes to clean, etc.
Yep. And one last question. I know last year in preparation, the council actually passed an agreement to hire the Troy Boys and Girls Club, and we put a certain fee. It did expire in 2019, and I was looking over some of the draft legislation. Cindy sent it late, and I did not see the proposed agreement in the upcoming finance. Do you intend to get us that? So
Right. So we sent you an email earlier later this afternoon, but earlier than now. The Boys and Girls Club is not running full facility. There was a late glitch in the insurance. We could not get the insurance from them that we demanded. So instead, we are running the pool this year. However, the Boys and Girls Club has been a great help in helping us develop the safety protocols, the COVID protocols, and training the lifeguards. So they will be employees of the city. The city will be running it.
okay. I'm looking through my email. If you don't mind resending that, I can't find it, Mayor.
Okay, it came from the deputy mayor.
Okay, yeah,
It's been around 4:30, or somewhere in that time.
didn't
I
get
don't
it.
see one either.
Yeah,
Oh, here it is. Yep,
Yeah.
I got it. It's 426.
What can I say?
Pretty good guess.
Perfect. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Further questions, discussion? Okay. All in favor, we can raise our hands.
Aye.
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 Opposed? And so we have 6, 0, and 1 absent. And I am confident that the mayor is going to sign this legislation. So thank you. Seriously, Patrick, or Mayor, thank you very much for working with us and getting this open.
Yep, I'll sign it.
Cool. All right, now we'll move to our resolution. Bear with me. I have to change this computer. Resolution 71, we have a resolution establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Councilmember Zaluski, Councilmember Steele, Councilmember Cummings, Councilmember McDermott. Do I have
Second.
second? Councilmember Zaluski on the discussion?
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Steele.
I want to thank all of the folks who wrote in their thoughts and made some, and would respectfully request that we receive unanimous consent for this. I think that would send a wonderful message to our community.
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
I still have some questions on this. I don't know who wants to answer them. I'm going to start. First thing I'd like to ask is the article that was in the newspaper. And I'm just going to read the little first statement from the paper. The paragraph says, you want to create a Reimagine Troy Community Justice Service work group to study public safety in the city and how it can be delivered. So I'd like you to explain that to me. Is it another study group? What is it that we're really looking at here? So I don't know if Sue wants to answer that.
I mean, Council President,
Yep, Councilmember Cummings.
I'll say just for me, I think this is obviously a moment when there is significant clarity that some change is needed. And obviously the governor is encouraging us to have these tough conversations as well, with a little bit of a stick of funding. But for me, when a tough decision is needed, my instinct is to reach out to the public of the people of Troy, who have so much passion and knowledge and expertise in so many different topics. You know, obviously we as legislators have to be aware of and do research into everything we can do. But when there's something of this scale, work of this scale that's needed over the coming year, I think it's important to really directly involve the people who are most able and willing to step up and help make that happen. So that's the idea for me, is just to invite more people into this process. You know, we're obviously all going to be deeply involved in it over the coming year, but we're not enough. We need the people of Troy to be helping with that process as well.
So, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So with you saying that, and I have several questions, so I apologize. So Mayor, you're going to be having to put together a group to actually get the reforms and so forth in place and make sure things are being followed. How do you see this group compare with working with your group that you're supposed to be putting together? And I hate to say their group, your group, our group. I don't know which is which. I'm trying to figure out what is what here. And if you can, I know they're talking with clergy, with police, with community members. I have a question to the majority. Did you go out to the community and speak to the community members when you were putting this resolution together to see what they want? So I don't know who wants to answer first, second, or however.
Maybe,
So, I mean, maybe first an update from the mayor about the process, if we have any more guidance on that, and then we'll.
I
No,
agree.
so it's been really frustrating. The governor came out with this executive order, and the executive order, as I've stated before, did indicate that there'd be further guidance. It's not just me. Mayors around the state are equally frustrated. We're getting no guidance from the government and time from the governor, and time is ticking at this point. People are obviously impatient, and although April seems like a long way away, it's not really when you get into a series of public meetings. So I'm going to need to start putting together a format for this, absent that sort of guidance from the second floor in Albany. And I'll do that. And my understanding from talking with the sponsors of this resolution is that this group will act as a resource. It will look into models. It will discuss and bring to the table ideas from the community. Any working group that I put together, you know, we're going to want to make it as large as we can, but it can't be so large that it's not functional and we don't get to an end point. So this is another venue through which ideas can come to that work group. So I see it as a support, as a mechanism to help us bring more voices and ideas to bear in this discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and you know, I totally agree that you know, clearly the executive order is clear where it says each chief executive shall convene and stakeholders, head of the local police agency, et cetera. But it does mention that you would be getting further guidelines from DCJS. So hopefully they'll move forward. And that was really the crux of, you know, my question. How would this working group interact with the larger working group? And we also have the North Central working group, which has been meeting with the regarding the increased violence. And my fear is just that, you know, we have working group upon working group, and some of the people like in the North Central working group are really valuable. And I think you're going to want them for maybe this working group and the mayor's working group, and this working group's calling for weekly meetings. I think that's going to be really, really tough. We're meeting bi-weekly, and then the mayor's working group at some point will be meeting. So I just, and I'm with you. I get, you know, we want like a council, almost sub-working group. I'm not opposed to it. I'm concerned of the amount of working groups and how they're all going to interact.
Council President,
Councilmember Ash McPherson.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My question is, again, the second piece of this is this legislation was put together because I've spoken to many in District 2, and they're tired of a meeting to have a meeting to have a meeting. And I understand that. They want action. They want to see things done. The meeting that we've been having starting on July 13 is a lot of good people at that table. It's clergy, it's police, it's school districts, it's probation. It's a lot of people at that table that all have the same thing. It's time to do something now. So my question is to the majority, did you go out to the community and speak to any of the community residents, community leaders in regard to this resolution? Again, I'm not against what you're trying to do. I understand it. But in order for me to go forward, I'm listening to my constituents. And they're saying they don't want another meeting for another meeting. So that's why I'm asking you these questions.
Council President?
Sorry, yep, Councilmember Steele.
You know, I think your work group in North Central is terrific, and that is that focus is very specific. And we're not talking about the same things at all. We are discussing larger reform issues, not specific programs that meet the needs of the community in your neighborhood necessarily. We are looking at, as Council Member Cummings said, some large policy directions. And so I think we received some great comments today that will help inform us. The work group will lead the process. It doesn't mean that, and they will have conversations with folks, It doesn't mean that other folks have to meet every week. That, and I don't want to give that impression that, and I don't see where we have the same, necessarily the same people. And I really don't see why we should be concerned about the number of work groups that we have. I mean, I think this is such a huge issue, certainly of concern and passion among our citizens. So I think it's going to be perfectly possible to accomplish without crossing or involving people, you know, in cross purposes. So, I mean, yes, NAACP has very much wants to be involved. So there are plenty of folks who are interested, and we have established an email for folks to you know, express their interest so that we can begin to have a pool of folks.
I have another.
Councilmember Ashman.
Sorry, Council President. Another piece to this is, we all know that I've been pushing for the public safety meeting since May, okay? And in reading this, we still haven't had a public safety meeting. And a public safety meeting brings so many different people to the table. And we're gonna now have a public safety meeting to have the public safety put together the committee. So what are you looking at, Eileen, as a public safety chair for putting together this committee?
I've spoken, Council President,
Yes, Councilmember McDermott.
I've spoken to several people at our meeting the other night. They came up to me and were in support of this group. And they asked to be considered to be on this group. So we're looking to have people email us and look at their resumes and select 9 people to be on this group and work out in the community and with us.
With these 9 people that you're referring to, so we're getting conflicting information, because some of the people at that meeting were telling me that they're not for this group, making another study of it. So you're looking at 9 regular community activists or residents of the community, in addition to who else? Or a total of 9 altogether?
A total of 9 altogether.
Which would be including all citizens? It's not going to be police, it's not going to be school districts, it's not going to be clergy, it's just going to be the community.
No, there will be a member of Troy Police on there. It was listed in the legislation who we would like to select from.
Well, on here, it's if I read it correctly, you're saying that you want to create or reimagine to assemble the council's public safety to compromise of clergy, police, public safety professionals, representative businesses and nonprofits, and others. To me, that would be more than 9 people. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them so far would just be of the groups that you said. So you're only going to have two community members. I'm just trying to get.
Council President,
Yes.
I think I said it previously, but I'll say it again. This work group will involve conversations throughout the community with key leaders. And it will not jeopardize the resources of your group. And if there are people in your group who don't want to participate, they don't have to. But if they have reached out to the public safety chair and they've expressed an interest, they'll certainly be involved either as a member or in conversation. I appreciate your diligence.
Ash McPherson, hold on. Go ahead, Councilmember Steele.
I appreciate your diligence in the details.
Thank you, Council President.
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
First of all, Councilwoman Steele, it's not my group. This is a community group. These are people that came together that wanted the meeting. I had asked for a meeting. I couldn't get a meeting. I asked them to make this meeting and they made it happen. So this is the community in District 2 that wants results. And I'm not trying to give anybody a hard time. I just want answers to know I've got to vote on something that I'm not 100% behind, you know, and I'm not trying to be a fool on that. I'm just trying to get clarity for the people that I represent. That's all. Thank you.
That's fair.
Mr. President?
Council member, yep, Council member Cummings.
I mean, I think you're right. Everyone wants results. And I think there are lots of things we can do as a council now, next meeting, the meeting after, as these ideas get brought forward. You know, obviously we heard tonight, there's ongoing suggestions, demands around the structure of the Civilian Review Board and the release of records, things that I support and encourage and would support legislation on. I'll also just note, you know, we as a council have subpoena power right now and would be happy to encourage the use of that to support the Civilian Review Board if they need it in an investigation. So there's plenty of action that we as a council can and should continue to be taking. But there's also need to think about the 10-year plan, to think about the longer term vision for how we deliver these services. Because as it is right now, we spend more than half of our city budget on public safety services, which are you know, needed and provided to community members across the board, but in ways that the feedback that we're hearing, it isn't always creating the outcomes that I think all of us would like to see. It's breaking down from all sides. And so that's where for us to say any of us has an instant solution or a piece of legislation ready to go tomorrow. Obviously, if you have it, bring it. But otherwise, that work needs to happen over the coming year. We're going to be asked to pass a budget in October under difficult financial conditions already. And, you know, as it was, that's roughly $20 million to the police department, roughly $20 million to other public safety and code. There's a tremendous amount of work that we all need to be doing both now to take action and over the coming year to be restructuring these systems so that they can provide better service long term.
Council President.
Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Thank you, Councilman Cummings, for that. Just wanted to let you know that, and I can speak for District 1 as well, because I was asked to. We have much violence, as you all know, from Hoosick Street up. And District 1 and 2 want the public safety. They want the police in our communities. And they don't want to defund. Maybe deobligate, that was a nice word for Councilman Gullett gave me, deobligate, which I like that word, but not to defund. So I'm gonna end it there because, you know, where I am on it, but I do want to just say another thing. And I asked if any of you spoke to any constituents and I didn't get a response. So I'm gonna assume that it was no, you know, into the community.
You didn't give me a chance to respond.
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry. But I'm going to say that tomorrow, July 17th at 6 p.m., location of 7th and Swift, there is a community prayer walk. And there's many people that we are hoping to come. And this is being put on by the community leaders down here. This is an area that we have many, many shootings. And I'm going to end my thing with just saying his name. And his name is Devon Clayton. Say his name, Devon Clayton. Say his name, Devon Clayton. Thank you.
Council President.
Yes, Councilmember Zalewski.
So to address Councilmember Ash McPherson's concerns about talking with the public, first of all, I would say we've just over the past 2 weeks received over 100 correspondences from our constituents across the city with their thoughts and desires on what's happening in our country and specifically what's happening in our city. If that can't move you, I don't know what will. But beyond that, I've received phone calls. I've received emails myself, and I'm sure others of us, our fellow members have received emails from their own constituents. I was at a neighborhood meeting, our first one in person, by the way, in the last several months in the Osgood neighborhood. I had personal conversations with people talking about this very subject when I was giving the council update. Universally at that meeting, people were in support of what we're doing. They appreciate the fact that we as council members are representatives of our constituents, and therefore the creation of a work group that consists of citizens makes a lot of sense. This is the input that actual citizens are going to contribute to the overall executive order that, of course, the mayor and his administration has to comply with. But in terms of having conversations, I've received more input from constituents and people across the city in the last several weeks than probably in the 8 years that I was on the council previously. So the conversations are happening. With regard to, council member asked me first, and you made a comment that we have too much talk and we need more action. This is our, and I say our, this is the Democratic majority's action that we're taking here. Certainly, if you have ideas for alternative actions, feel free to present them because we all need to be working on this together. But this is where we're at right now. And I want to commend Councilmember Steele for putting together this resolution. We all contributed back to it, but the core resolution was her work, and she put a lot of time into it. And again, that wasn't just the product of Councilmember Steele's her own thoughts on it by herself. That was tons of input that she received from people. So I just want to make that clear. There's been a lot of conversations going on over this. We didn't just like dream this up ourselves and say, well, this is what we think about it. We're listening to everyone, and we're listening, of course, to the people that support the police department. This resolution is not called the defund the Troy Police Department resolution. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with putting the power of our strategy for policing and for criminal justice services into the people's hands and allowing them to give us their input, because we don't believe we're necessarily experts in this. We're just part-time citizen legislators, and we want to hear from our constituents on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zaluski. And you mentioned something, and it kind of struck me. You were, obviously on the council from 2009 to 17, and why do you feel a reso at that time, wasn't needed, now is? And that's just me asking, because you kind of put a red flag in front of me.
What's your question?
Why was a resolution like this not passed during the 8 years that you were in office? I mean, clearly, something's changed in your mind.
Well, I think something's changed in the world around us. I mean, if we're all paying attention here, there is a movement at hand here that demands our response. We need to rise to the occasion here. So during my 8 years on the city council, which by the way ended in 2015, not 2017, things were generally quiet when it came to policing and what was happening in the city of Troy. We had crime increases, crime went down, crime went up, but we now find ourselves at a pivotal moment in history, and at least the Democratic majority here wants to contribute our voices to that and to allow our constituents to contribute our voices. But I don't understand what that has to do with.
This is healthy. Obviously, systemic racism is used throughout the resolution. So clearly, to me that it's not just the past 6 months, obviously.
Council President.
Certainly.
Councilmember Steele.
Ken, did you finish?
Well, I just wanted to say, yes, the core issues at work here didn't just arise. Certainly, our country has had a history of racism. I don't think anyone's debating that. But the issue has risen to a point where no one can turn their head to this. And we feel that we want to take action on this and contribute something to it. And I know, Council President Mantella, we've talked about this, and I know you indicated that, this is the mayor's, it's ultimately the executive order does say that it's up to the administration to present the plan to the council. We just feel that we want to contribute to that, and our contribution is to empower our citizens to have their voices heard during this process.
Councilmember Steele.
Thank you. I guess I would say that seeing that the knee for 8 minutes on George Floyd's neck really is a wake-up call was a wake-up call to our nation. And not since the 60s has our nation been so impassioned to step forward and act against the systemic racism that has been part of our sad 400-year history. And so we all are to blame for not having taken action. But that doesn't mean that we can't start now at this moment in time. And I would hope that everyone would feel the same way and not parse words or whatever. And I think the work that each of us are doing in our districts for our citizens in our own way is what we were elected to do. And I commend everyone who is doing it in their own way.
Perfect. And that was the conversation I really wanted to get to the heart of. So saying that, I'd like, is there further discussion? I guess my only question, now that, I kind of view this as more of a subcommittee to the larger working group that the mayor is tasked to undertake, or maybe ours morphs into the mayor's. I'm not quite sure. But it sounds like, that kind of our working group would be kind of a sub-working group to the larger working group. Saying that also, do you think February 1st, I was looking at the legislation, and February 1st, you had stated, Councilmember Steele, for the report. Do you think maybe a little sooner, only because I view us, and how is this report going to mesh with the mayor's report? So somehow the report that the council or the report that this working group does will have to coincide with the mayor's working group. And I just see a little more work involved, and we have to, at least in order to not have our funding taken away, pass this by April 1st. So I'm kind of looking at April 1st backwards, and maybe a little sooner for the council's working group report, so it can be, put in to the report that the mayor is tasked. I don't know your feelings.
Could I answer that?
Sure.
Or unless the councilperson still want to answer it. Yeah, so we spoke with the mayor about this. We wanted to make sure that timelines matched up. We originally did plan to make the deadline for the working group January 1st, but felt that we wanted to give especially because the holidays, when you're in December, folks get busy. People might not attend meetings as often, so we just wanted to give that extra month. And that still gives, the February 1st deadline still gives all of February and all of March to take that input. That the mayor's office will take that input and mesh that with their own group. And the mayor thought that the 2 months was a reasonable amount of time to put all that together. I don't know if the mayor wants to comment on it, but that was the result of our conversations with him.
And Council President,
yep.
I would hope, because the organization is going to be determined by the members itself, but I would hope that they would be giving us some periodic updates that will, eventually become the final report, but that there would be periodic updates on items.
Yep. And, that was another one of my questions, Councilmember Steele. Do you plan, and maybe this is for Councilmember McDermott, because you're charged or designee to oversee the working group, do you intend to provide them a little bit of staff? Or is this solely going to be only because, I've been on committees, we've all been on various boards, working groups, and, there's a lot of work entailed. We don't really have a huge staff. Who will be assisting them from either the council or the limited staff that we have? And B, Councilmember McDermott, do you intend to oversee the group as like a public safety meeting, or just the working group will schedule the meetings, things like that?
I'm hoping to be there at the meetings to oversee it and take notes. But I think Councilmember Steele could answer more to this question.
Thank you. Councilmember Steele.
I think we need the legislation says that the chair of the public safety or her designee will act as a convener of the group. But I think the strength of this group is in its fact that it's made up of citizens to inform us. If they feel the need that they need staffing, we can certainly address those matters. There's a lot of forming of a group that takes place, and I think in order for this to be successful, we need to not over legislate and allow them to do their work. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I was not, just to clarify what I was saying, I was not at all intending on us being a part of the working group, driving that working group. It's supposed to be a grassroots working group. I just know, I worked in various roles where we have working groups, and the working group, they're sometimes full-time people working jobs, moms, dads, etc. And to develop, a plan, they may need some assistance in helping them do that. So that was my question. I mean, I've had several working groups, and we've always, had to provide a little bit of staff and a little bit of help. So that was just my question. Okay.
Council President.
Yeah, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Mayor, are you still with us?
He is.
Is he there?
I am.
Hi.
Hi.
When are you looking? And again, I'm just trying to get all my ideas in my head and figure out this. When are you looking to put a committee together? Are you looking to do the same type of thing, to put so many people together for this? I know you said you don't have any guidelines, but as the mayor, you have control of how you're going to do it. So is there any talking of how many people you're looking to put together as a work group, or what you're looking to do?
No, I haven't gotten that far yet. Again, I was waiting on guidance from the state, which is frustratingly slow. I've had conversations with other mayors. NYCOM, New York Conference of Mayors, is starting to tee this up as a discussion group so that we can steal the best ideas from those among us. I don't have, as I sit here, an idea of a plan or how big the group would be. But I do know that that's something we need to start moving forward on soon. And we won't wait for the New York State government if it delays much longer. I think there's a lot of questions raised about this. Is it perfect? Probably not. In retrospect, we will probably realize there were better ways to go about this. But if we wait for perfect legislation, we're never going to get anything done, not just in this matter, but in any matter. So we make the best decision we can make with the information and data that we have at our hands at the time. We move forward and we commit to working together and remaining flexible. And that will give us the best product that we can muster.
Thank you. And I appreciate your honesty in answering that question, because in the resolution that's in front of us, there is a be it resolved that the Troy City Council, in support of the mayor's implementation of Executive Order 203, that we hereby pledge to facilitate community conversations. If there's no implementation, I can't support that. And that's what I was trying to see, is if there's an implementation, if there's something that you were trying to do, or, you know, I was just kind of having a struggle with that. Again, I understand and I see what the majority is trying to do, and I truly appreciate what they're trying to do. There's things that needs to be changed and done. I'm just not sure, by talking to many of my constituents on this at this time, it's to them, and to me, it's just like a study. And I do hope it would be something more than that. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
If I could, a study is what the governor asked for, a study and a plan.
Yeah.
So that's what we're delivering. And
Well, that's what the council's delivering. That's not what you're delivering. You haven't put yours together yet.
no, well, I intend to honor the executive order, which asks us to sit down and study the issue and come up with a plan. That's what I intend to do. And that's a little bit different than the group that's meeting in North Central. And there's no reason why they can't operate on parallel tracks. Their objective is different than this objective. And so we will go about it in a little bit different way.
Thank you.
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Steele.
going back to that paragraph, Kim, the way I interpret that is that Executive Order 203, the mayor has to implement it. He may not have a plan at the moment, but by next year, if it's not implemented, the governor is threatening funding. So the city will be implementing, and we are here to support it. I mean, that's the way I view that.
Right. Council President.
Councilmember Ash
But
McPherson.
at the time, you want me to support something that's not even there yet. That's my only point on that. Thank you.
I don't really, yeah.
Did you have anything, Councilmember Cummings?
Let's take a vote.
I agree. Let's go.
Any further questions before we move on? I think we all have a better idea on where, you know, what's being proposed. So this is healthy. I'm going to take a slow roll. Councilmember Gully is absent. Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Council President, I'm going to vote no on this. And it's because I feel that more can be done. I feel that I've said enough what I needed to say. So I'm just going to vote no.
Councilmember Steele.
I appreciate everyone listening tonight and all the comments that were made. It's a complex issue. It's not going to be solved with a work group or by any of us tonight, but we have to start somewhere. And so that's how I view this personally. And I would encourage all of those who've written in to please express an interest if you really want to do something. You know, we had great passion in a rally, and now let's all get together at the table and work together. Thank you. I vote yes.
Thank you, Councilmember Steele. Councilmember Cummings.
You know, as has been stated repeatedly, this is a first step. I think it is incredibly important that we as a body come together to recognize that Black Lives Matter, and that there are deep injustices that need to be rectified that go back hundreds of years in this country, and that work is not something that can be done immediately or swiftly, but is something that is an ongoing process of seeking justice and seeking reformation, and that obviously encourage folks to step up and participate in whatever way they're able in this process. Sending in a resume or an inquiry would be helpful from anyone who's ready to dedicate that time, but sending in a note of support or a desire to stay informed about the process is also helpful. I think the goal here is to include as many people as possible in whatever ways they're able to participate. And so I thank everyone for their incredible participation, and then look forward to the work over the coming year in making it happen. So that being said, I vote yes.
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings. Can you give folks the email for the tens of thousands that are watching YouTube right now?
I believe it's 17. Actually, Sue, what was the email that we ended up deciding to have?
It was at apply@citycouncil.org.
That's correct. Apply@troycitycouncil.org.
Whose website is that, or whose email?
That is a forwarding domain that will forward to, well, I don't know. Is it the four of us? It goes to the four of us. So we will extend that if the minority also wants to, if you're interested in receiving applications, we'll extend that as well.
And certainly the city council folks could email city clerk. I would think that would be a very appropriate.
I think that'd be much more appropriate than just to the majority, so we can see what's coming in, and we're in a vote, but yeah, that concerns me a little. I would appreciate that going to Troy City Council or city clerk at troyny.gov. So, okay. Councilmember Zalewski.
I think I've said everything I need to say, so I vote aye.
Very good. Councilmember McDermott.
In an email this evening, we were asked to not dissect every word of this legislation and to look at the message that is there. Therefore, I vote yes.
Okay, Councilmember McDermott. And Council President Mantello, very quickly, I certainly want to go on record. I do not and will not support defunding our police. And I don't believe that this resolution does that whatsoever. So on that note, a couple of people had contacted me and I clarified this resolution does not do that. I've said it many times. For me, you can't vote against a working group. I mean, I can't. That's me. And that's obviously because, these are folks that are going to put their time in. My concern is I don't want this group just to be a window dressing group. I want it to mesh with the mayor's larger working group. It sounds like you've taken steps to ensure that. And that was my real concern. And then obviously, as Councilmember Ash McPherson mentioned, the North Central Working Group, but they're solely obviously working on their neighborhood and their adjoining neighborhood. So, for me, very quickly, I attended the second meeting and I equate this resolution to a number of feelings around the table. At the beginning of the meeting, Deb Garrett, former council member, said, think of one word that kind of describes the mood you're in right now. And it was on the heels of Deb's car actually getting hit by bullets in North Central. And so there was about, I'd say 20 people around the table. And there were a couple words that were repeated, and they were hope, trust, respect, love, partnership, action. saying that that's my feelings. I will not oppose this working group. I just don't want it to be window dressing. And I want to see action. I want to see us working with the mayor, with the larger group, and obviously a plan back to the council so we can have time to dissect it before April 1st. So I am going to vote for this resolution. I would hope that the minority is going to be included, and certainly that email concerns me. So if we can change that and include the minority a little bit more, that would be very respectful and certainly warranted. So I vote aye. So the resolution passes 5 ayes, 1 no, 1 absent. Okay. And now I will take a motion to adjourn, and we will go right into the special meeting. Do I
Motion
have
to
a
adjourn?
motion? Councilmember Zaluski, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Mara, if we need to give you a couple minutes, we're ready to go right into the special.
Nope, let's power through.
Okay, beautiful. And bear with me.
I might have a guest who could do the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
That would be wonderful.
Hang
Is
on.
his name possibly Michael? I love guests. I don't see people anymore, so when I see them, I get very excited. You know that, Kim.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
This better be good, Ken. It's his cat. He got his cat to talk.
Oh, boy. I see a light.
I'm thinking it's a niece or a nephew.
Yes, my family's visiting right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Does she want to do it?
Can you please introduce your niece or nephew?
Yes. Juliana. This is Juliana.
Hi, Juliana. How are you?
That's our council president, and these are our council members here.
Hi
Okay?
there.
And council president has the American flag, and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you want to lead us in that?
All right. Listen, we're going to put ourselves on mute. Thank you very much, Juliana. And you must be very proud of your uncle.
All right. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank
You're welcome.
you, Juliana.
Good job.
Nice job. You do it better than your uncle.
All right. This will
Okay.
be short.
Yes. That's
No,
so
I'm
nice.
gonna talk, Ken. It's not gonna be short. I'm gonna talk.
That is so nice. That's very nice. Okay, Mara, let's take a roll.
Councilmember Gully is absent. Councilmember McPherson.
Here.
Councilmember Steele.
Present.
Councilmember Cummings.
Present.
Councilmember Zaluski.
Here.
Councilmember McDermott.
Here.
Council President Mantello.
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Okay, presentation of the agenda are the 2 items that we just passed in finance. Public forum, Mara?
No, we read everything at the beginning of finance.
Very good. Local laws, none. Ordinance 43.
Ordinance amending the code of the city of Troy, section 216-13, pool use fees and operating hours. Council President Mantello, Councilmember Gully, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Zaluski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings. Discussion? We're all just thrilled. Thumbs up.
Very good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Ordinance 43 passes, 6 ayes, 0 noes.
Resolution 71.
Resolution establishing the Reimagine Troy Community Justice Services Work Group in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Councilmember Zaluski, Councilmember Steele, Councilmember Cummings, Councilmember McDermott.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Steele. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Zaluski. Discussion?
Council President,
Yes, Councilmember Ash McPherson.
just to make it clear, I'm not voting against Black Lives Matter. It's against the process of the meeting. That's what a meeting of another meeting. That's all I'm voting no on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ash McPherson. I'm going to do any further discussion. Okay, slow roll, Mara.
Councilmember McPherson,
No.
Councilmember Steele,
As we've said, it's a moment in time, and it's an opportunity for us to come to the table and to affect some change. And so I'm pleased to vote yes.
Councilmember Cummings,
Yes.
Councilmember Zaluski,
Aye.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes.
Council President Mantello.
Yes. And Mara, just in the future, you still have to say Councilmember Gully and then just absent. That's all.
Oh, okay, sorry, my oversight. Resolution 71 passes, 5 ayes, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Perfect. If there's no further business, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. I'm sure
Oh.
Ken with his family is going to make that motion. Ken
Motion to adjourn.
Zaluski makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Ash McPherson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And
Okay.
go have a great time with that family.
Thank you.
Embrace every moment.
Everybody enjoy. Don't forget tomorrow night, the walk.
Yes.
Okay?
please.
Take
6
care.
o'clock.
Stay
All
well.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank